All right, peace family. We should be live right now. We should be live. Shout out to everybody in the chat room waiting. All right. See y'all in there. Mr. Zeno, the divine messenger, Ethan's dad. Yeah, Ethan's dad said, Rich, been on a smooth run. Yes, I have. Yes. Yes. That was done intentionally. And I'm glad that y'all noticed. I'm thankful for the universal current that runs through my body that allows me to do what I do. Amen. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Got Alkebulan 44 back in the building. Welcome back, my brother.
Peace to the God, bro. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Good.
It's good to have you back here. You are you're a very scientific brother.
Right.
I like telling the story over and over because it's an amazing story about how I came across your work. And I said this plenty of times. I was meditating, family, with a gold bar. I had a gold bar, and I keep hearing about gold, so I finally got a gold bar, and I'm meditating. And one of the things in meditation, I seen like a dragon. That's a whole nother conversation. But I went on the Instagram a little while after that for whatever reason, and I'm on the Explore page, and boom, I'm running right into this brother's page. And I'm like, oh shit, dude is dropping some shit. So very interesting way I met and came across this brother. Very, very interesting. Then I seen Blue Pill was following him. So I said, oh shit, he must know something. Blue Pill followed it. Man, it's good to have you back here, brother. We about to get started. I want to let me get to some ads and then we're gonna get started. All right, family. Oh, damn, why do I have the black background? I don't understand. Where's my hold up, y'all? There we go. Everybody, make sure you text Rich to 646. Text the word Rich to 646-760-7806 so you could be notified personally by me when I go live with my guest. Because YouTube forgets a lot, so I want everybody to be on the on my text list, and that way I could just give you whatever notifications directly, and we don't have to depend on YouTube. Okay, family. But besides that, I also want to give a shout out to my brother King Simon. He's one of the best when it comes to numerology. Make sure you text him your full name and date of birth to 347-496-1022. All right, family. He also has a course on udemy.com. Check that out. And that's an introductory course, and you'll learn about his other material from that. Also, family, I got one of the best websites out there when it comes to workshops that are suitable for this paradigm that we are in. We are in there's a major spiritual shift happening. There's a major financial shift happening. And I got some good workshops dealing with both of those on blackmagicuniversity.com, family. Okay. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Make sure, as always, family, it's very important. Make sure you hit the like button. The like button is very important. Very important for the algorithm of this channel to get the channel popping. I want everybody to tune in and see the Buddha. I got the best mic stand in the game. You know what I'm saying? Shout out. Me and A.A. Rashid came up with this idea when I filmed them at the studio. So shout out to the brother A.A. Rashid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Shout out to the God. Shout out to the brother Isaiah. I just did an interview with the brother Isaiah. All right, so we're gonna get started. Everybody should be settled in by now. Everybody should have pressed the like and told their family and friends that we are going on a metaphysical journey tonight, a cosmic journey tonight. We are in a Alkebulan. We are in a constant search to find ourselves, discover ourselves, mankind, or what all the names, humanity, all the names that they give to civilization. And we're always trying to discover where we come from. And one of the stories in our mythologies deals with the primordial waters of noon. So I guess to start out with, I want to ask you, let's talk about the god Noon. Who's Noon in our ancient mythology, my brother?
Well, okay, so when you're talking about the primordial waters of noon, you're talking about the omnipresent, right? You're talking about presence, which has 8 different deities that are responsible for existing as a piece of the primordial waters of noon, right? So noon is a masculine principle in reference to Nunet, right? So you got Nunet, which represents the primordial waters himself. Then you got Kak and Kaket, which represent infinite darkness. And then you got what's the other name? The Het and Hahet, which represents empty space. And then you got Amun Amunet, which represents quintessence or omnipresence. So you got 4 different deities that are a part of this primordial water. So we're talking about complete darkness. We're talking about, in essence, before existence came into being, right? So, you know, the primordial waters itself is also relegated to different mythology. So even if you go into the Mayan mythology, you go into the Mesopotamian, they always speak about the waters, everything coming out of the waters. And scientists today understand that we live in a hyperfluid dynamic in reference to water, but we live in a more refined version of water. So, and we'll speak on it a little further, but this is why they don't really speak about the body too much in a sense from a electrical magnetic perspective, because they understand more specifically that melanin is a semiconductor, right? So when you introduce melanin inside of a hyperfluid environment that's electrostatic, that's your superpower, you know. So this is why they even and down to even scientists, when you're thinking about theoretical physicists and, you know, the new age scientists today, and even the ones back in the early 1900s 1800s, never addressed the primordial waters, because again, when you trace back to the primordial waters, you got to commemorate and pay homage to the blackness, to the darkness, right? So everything comes out of darkness, light comes out of darkness. So again, we're talking about the primordial waters. We're talking about before existence even came into being, which is dealing with 8 deities in total that are part of this primordial waters. You know, so the science to even look at infinity when you're talking about darkness is called quantum chromodynamics. So if you want to understand the scientific concept of what we're speaking about in reference to the primordial waters, look up quantum chromodynamics. But yeah, that's a very ancient concept in reference to not only Kemetic mythology, but, you know, mythology just in general.
Why do you think this this primordial darkness um was the creation of this universe? Would you call it a mistake? Was it on purpose? What does our text say about why the primordial waters would even want to have this system in place, this matrix in place?
Well, let's get into it, you know, because we're talking about God engineering. So we're dealing with a higher level of
You
intelligence.
said God engineering.
God engineering, right?
Yes.
We're dealing with God engineering, you know, so it's not by accident. And, you know, of course, a lot of scientists today, they take heed to that concept and that perspective. But how our ancestors seen the universe and its creation came by way of what you call a steady state universe. Today, we reference it as the Big Bang, but the Big Bang takes place every millisecond. And to speak on that just a little bit, when you're talking about the primordial waters of noon, again, there was an initial disturbance that took place that initiated the creation of the universe. In the actual mythology, they speak about these 8 deities that actually created an island. And within the island of empty space, they placed the egg on it. And from that egg, Amun came out, right? Amun was born. So we're talking about hydrogen. So prior to hydrogen, again, you had the primordial waters, which is darkness, but out of darkness came hydrogen, which is something, again, you can't physically see. But when you look at the periodic table, hydrogen is actually the only element in existence, because every other element beyond hydrogen is just hydrogen folded in on itself. So for example, when you look at carbon, which is, you know, the 666, when you look at 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons, you're just looking at hydrogen, the initial element, Amun, that's folded in on itself 6 times, right? So that's really the essence of true alchemy, is by way of them understanding hydrogen and understanding the mechanics of how creation took place by way of one element, right? So when you're talking about the primordial waters, out of the egg itself came Amun, but they deified and represented an egg because they understood that an egg produced what you call a centripetal convergence, because everything comes out of the primordial waters in a spiral formation, which is called centripetal convergence. So an egg displays that by way of the top and the bottom being oblong. So you notice on the bottom of an egg, it's a lot larger than the top. And that's because fluid inside the egg takes a centripetal convergence. And then even if you were to apply an electrode at the top of the egg and the bottom, you'll notice that it'll come out with a ratio with the 1.618, which is the golden spiral. So that's
what you talking about, like the torus field? Is that what you're talking about?
the torus field, right?
Okay.
Torus field. So in essence, that's what they're speaking about when they're talking about the egg, what they call like the golden egg, or the egg of creation. They're talking about specifically a specific trajectory by way of, again, the spiral, which is a centripetal convergence towards center. And that's how we all came into existence. We spiraled into existence. So this is why, again, they keep this notion of the primordial waters away, because they understand that there was an initial vibration and a disturbance that created the universe. But that vibration is still taking place, because in essence, when you're talking about primordial waters, you're talking about God per se. But God is what you call a infinite dielectric capacitor, which means it oscillates infinitely. So everything that came out of these primordial waters still vibrates based on that initial disturbance. And again, if you look at our reality today, we talk about the law of vibration, which is one of the 7 Hermetic laws. So in essence, if we're vibrating continuously based on that initial disturbance from the primordial waters, then in essence, vibration deals with the fact that you're moving in between 2 rest points. So when we're looking at our reality, we're always returning to either rest point. The physical reality that we can see is a disturbance or interference pattern based on the disturbance from the initial primordial waters. You see, so the physical reality just represents an interference pattern. But by us oscillating, we're always returning back to one of those rest points. The physical reality represents the motion of the wave, the centerpiece. So just think about a pendulum, for example. When the pendulum swings, as it's swinging, that motion is the physical reality, the part of reality that we can't see. But it gets to a point at the end where it stops for like a millisecond before it returns back. That point where it stops, it returns back to the absolute, which is complete rest. Again, it's a point of oscillation between 2 rest points. So with that being said, the physical reality is always vibrating, oscillating back to the primordial waters, back to the physical, back to the primordial waters, back to the physical. The people, again, who have the highest form of technology on this planet, which is melanin, is a semiconductor, which means we have the capacity to hold the charge. So when we're vibrating and we're returning back to the absolute, we have a capacity to process information from the primordial waters and bring it back to the physical reality. And see, this is what they were speaking about in reference to a paper that came out called the Gateway Experiment. In essence, when they developed 2 techniques, the government did, in order to know how to stay in the place of rest in order to process information before they return back to the physical reality. And the 3 of them were biofeedback, transcendental meditation, and hypnosis. But again, we're dealing with people who don't have a high form of technology, which is the body. But again, melanin being the semiconductor has the capacity to, when we vibrate back to that place of absolute or infinite or primordial waters, we have the capacity to pull information back within the physical reality. So when we're talking about receiving, downloads and inspiration and creative ideas, that's because we are resonating at a specific frequency. But again, a fast, eating electric foods, sun gazing, putting your bare feet in the grass, raising the voltage of the body is what allows you to, when you tap into that rest point, pull out information and bring it back to the physical. So when people, again, are saying they're receiving downloads during a fast, when they're eating electric foods, when they're even working out, building the electromagnetic body, this is why. And it's because we are constantly oscillating based on that initial disturbance of the primordial waters that took place. And that deems us a dielectric capacitor, the same thing that the Olmecs were into when they built the huge monuments, the huge heads, because the huge heads were made of black obsidian. Black obsidian is a dielectric capacitor that can oscillate infinitely, you see. So that's in essence why they don't, again, tell us about the body in reference to the primordial waters, because if they did, they got to return back to the blackness.
According to your research, when you talk about this disturbance that took place in the primordial waters, What were some of the first things that were created? Like how soon, since Sirius is so important in our mythology, was that one of the first planets that was created? Was Earth one of the first planets? What was one of the first planets created after this disturbance? Like how did this shit jump off?
Well, okay, so you got to look at the actual mythology. So when you're looking at the mythology, again, hydrogen was the initial creation out of, and again, when hydrogen comes together, it begins to build. So the first thing that you think about in the physical reality when you think about hydrogen is you think about the sun. Then everything else came after that. So in essence, the primordial waters birthed the sun, but everything came off of the sun because the sun then birthed the stars and things of that nature. So today, even if when you see supernovas or stars dying out, the sun itself is being continuously powered by the supernovas via the radiation. So Sirius and Pleiades and all these different star systems are being created by way of the sun, but the sun was the initial process of that step taking place.
Wasn't is isn't Sirius the central sun though? Isn't that the
Sirius the central sun?
yeah?
Sirius is a central sun, but in essence, Sirius again came by way of the actual sun that we can physically see.
You ever heard just like we talk about the sun and it radiates a golden light. I've read that Sirius radiates a blue light. So we got the golden light, then we got the blue light from Sirius. So have you, just like we sun gaze with the sun and we see that golden light, have you ever like tried sun gazing or heard of people gazing at Sirius to get that blue light from Sirius?
Well, see, that's key. And you can sun gaze at any star system. The sun is more prominent because we can physically feel it because we're dealing with infrared radiation. So it's common, right? But in essence, when you look at Sirius, you're looking at a constellation that releases a pulse. And all of our ancestors talked about a pulse that was coming from either Sirius, from Pleiades. And the math to actually study this pulse that's coming from these higher star systems is called the Dirac delta function. So that math is based on literally a pulse coming from a source. And they didn't call it the Dirac delta function back then, but that's the science in reference to a pulse coming from these higher star systems. Now, this pulse that I'm speaking about more specifically is called a longitudinal wave. And today, scientists call it longitudinal interferometry because it's dealing with light that is coming to you instantaneous. So we receive downloads from Sirius and Pleiades all the time, but again, we're not physically feeling the reactions, but we get the fact that we're receiving it based on setting up a specific resonance to allow us to process the information that's coming from Sirius. But it's by way of a longitudinal wave. If anybody types in sound wave into Google, you'll see a longitudinal wave. But basically, it's a compression rarefaction wave, and that's what they're speaking about. So they're always talking about a pulse, these pulses that are coming from these higher star systems. But this is why even today in our society, things have already been named prior to us getting here. What I mean is, when we're born, we don't have the capacity to name things based on how we internalize the vision or visual that we see of Sirius. So, they call the sun, they call the moon, but you always got to ask yourself, like, why did they go about their way, more so the Europeans, and name things based on their own limited perception of how they see reality? Well, again, understand tones. So words build worlds. So when you look at the word, when you look at words, you're looking at tones, and tones set up specific resonance, which deals with oscillation. So when you're dealing with resonance and oscillation, you're dealing with communication, which is a two-way street, right? So in essence, when we go outside and we commemorate the sun to represent the sun, we're not properly setting up the proper resonance by naming the sun based on the sound that was coming from it, because we've been educated to call the sun and look up the sun in a way that's very limited to the way our ancestors seen the sun, right? So when we're looking at Sirius, when we're looking at Pleiades, that's why it's important again because perception is everything. Perception is everything. And this is why it's important to back engineer and look at how our ancestors viewed society and reality based on their context of how the cosmic mechanics took place and how it worked. So when you look at Sirius, the idea is to look at it from a perspective of your ancestors seeing it. So the little bit of information about me speaking about the fact that a longitudinal wave propagates from Sirius now creates a new visual in the mind. So not only do you have a higher level of appreciation for Sirius based on that little bit of information, but now when you go outside, there's a new visual. There's a new vision that you have of it in your mind. And this is why I say perception is everything, because there's a physiological process that takes place in the body by way of viewing it a completely different way or contrary to the way you've been educated how it was. So if I go outside, for example, and look at the sun, I'm gonna use the sun for an example. If I go outside and I look at the sun and I say, well, damn, like we've been educated that the sun is this and that. But then I go back and do some research and I say, oh, wait a minute, that's not how the sun really is. That's not what the sun actually is. If I then go outside again and I say, well, the sun is actually a hyperdimensional gateway that serves as a medium between us and higher star systems, then I have a proper context to what the sun actually represents, which then allows me to process a higher level of quality of information from the sun, because now the sun is seeing something outside of its own existence that it can refer back to, because you've properly set up the right resonance. You see,
if the sun is a hyperdimensional gateway to what? These higher to what? What would you say?
it's a medium that serves between us and higher star systems. So when we're talking about even receiving information from Sirius, Pleiades, and all these other higher star systems, they're being modulated via the sun. But again, the sun propagates these what you call these longitudinal waves by way of receiving the information from Sirius, and we receive it and process it. And that process of us even embedding longitudinal waves is called optimized translation of vorticity. So that's the science in reference to embedding longitudinal waves. But again, melanin being a semiconductor can not only process light, but we store it as a charge. So we, in essence, have the capacity to naturally embed this information by way of us having this natural symbiotic relationship to the universe.
Let me ask you a question. After you answer it, I'll tell you why I asked it. Do you mind incarnated back into this realm again after this, your present incarnation? Would you mind coming back here?
Would I mind coming back?
Yeah. If you had a choice, like some people like, hell no, I ain't coming back. Fuck Earth. Would you mind? Would you want to come back here or have another experience? Or you done with this realm?
I mean, it's all relative to, the level of information that you process here. So people who are saying they don't want to come here, or come back here may have a limited way of viewing what the reason being here is for. You see, so in essence, to answer your question specifically, I would, only under the premise of knowing a certain level of information to come back here and impart to, other individuals so that they can, receive the same level of information and then, have a successful transition. But
the reason why I asked that is because a couple of not direct quotes verbatim, but I remember Bobby saying how he had an interview with Minister Clemson Brown, and he was talking about how man is God's, which I guess what you're talking about, this all that is, this prime source creator, this primordial waters of noon. Man is God's perfecting agent. And I remember Dr. Valentine saying that we don't serve God, God serves us, and that we do what we got to do so God can understand itself. So it seems like this prime source creator kind of likes humanity. It kind of it enjoys humanity because we're serving. I mean, we're hoping this creator, this prime source creator understand itself. It's a student. Dr. Phil Valentine called this God a student. Where he's our student because he learns from observing us about himself through the acts that we do. So just look at it like that. Hearing them say that this all that is, this prime source creator, this primordial waters, this consciousness enjoys humanity because man is its perfecting agent, and then hearing speakers, people talk so down on humanity, saying, I'm never going back there. And even the ancient Egyptians talked about the goal was to not come here again. So it could be a little confusing. And even when you deal with the New Age community, some of the people may talk good about humanity. Then you may come to the conscious community and they may talk down about humanity because maybe they got a fucked up childhood. I don't know. But what's your thoughts on the conflicting ideas about incarnation is the worst thing that can happen? Reincarnation coming down here is like a jail sentence versus we're allowing this prime source created to understand itself, and this is an opportunity for us to experience heaven on earth. It's like two different ideas. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. So when you're talking about, again, the primordial waters of noon, you're talking about omnipresence. You're talking about light. And omnipresence means there's nothing outside of infinity, because omnipresence is infinite. Yeah. So you can't step out of infinity, right? So light has to participate in matter in order to become something it's not. In order for light to reach its goal, it has to differentiate into different segments of what it really represents, which is the microcosm, which represents us, right? So, you know, the key is to, while you're here, first of all, understand that we physically incarnated into this physical reality by way of choice. And we chose to actually go through a specific script prior to coming here so we can actually know how to accelerate back up out of this physical reality. But in essence, the Egyptians, within their, I would say, limited wanting to come to this reality, is because they wanted to exceed as much information here in this reality before they made transition. Because when you finally make transition, you now have a choice if you're conscious upon leaving the physical body. So the choices is continue to remain in the you know, the celestial world with the ancestors, or through biophage you can actually come, or bacteriophage, you can actually come back because you've been imparted with certain level of information, and then continue the you know, the generational seed of individuals who can, you can now impart this new higher level of information into these babies, the babies impart it to their babies, et cetera, and just continue the generational line. But that's a choice that you can make prior to leaving here. But again, the goal is to remain conscious upon leaving the physical body. They always understood the concept of dying as well, because this was the key on even eating electric foods, staying outside, getting as much light as you can, putting your bare feet in the grass, because again, the melanin is a semiconductor which can hold light. So in essence, they understood that once the physical body dropped, if the plasma in the body was completely ionized, then it was not only intelligent enough, but it had a capacity, or it was able to gather, or have the capacity to gather enough escape velocity to successfully disengage from the physical body and return back as a star. You see, so that's the key in essence of transition, is because you want to accelerate up. But once you get there, again, there's a choice that you can make by way of the plasma field of the plasma body being now conscious and aware of the whole death process taking place. So, you know, like I said, light is omnipresent, so it has to participate in matter to become something that's not. And anything beyond perfection is death. So, yeah, the key is to continue to teach the universe, you know, what it is, and the universe responds. The energy output that we give off in this physical reality, the sun responds. So we're constantly educating the universe by way of the actions that we partake in here in this physical reality. But imbuing ourselves with a level of information, not only is it going to go with us beyond this physical reality, but the body itself, the physical body is able to maintain itself once the plasma accelerates out the physical body, and then remain conscious, you know, upon leaving this the physical reality.
You said the sun responds to our actions. How does the sun, like, how does the sun respond to our actions, and what actions may you be talking about?
Well, okay, so more specifically, what I'm speaking about is you know, dance, chanting, things like sun, speaking to the sun, all of us coming together as a collective and doing something with a specific intent. And even with, if you look at the riots, that took place during the George Floyd situation, shortly after the riots took place, the sun's flare started taking off, and it's because of the energy output that's being given off by way of the black bodies that are in a specific area. This is what they were speaking about when Albert Einstein was talking about black body radiation, because literally we change the charge density in a room. So when we step into a room, we change the charge density. And they understand in ancient Kemet that the stars in the cosmos is what charges the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is what charges our environment. Our environment then charges the body, and then the body charges the plasma. So our symbiotic relationship to the sun and the body is by way of plasma. But again, ionizing and electrifying the plasma, raising the voltage, is what's going to give you the capacity to manipulate the sun by way of certain actions that you do here in this physical reality. But it comes even greater when we all collectively come together with a specific intent to initiate a reaction, you see. But we have to set up the proper resonance. And I'm going to continue to keep saying that, because we got to understand that we have to begin to see the sun for what it really represents. So back to what I was speaking about as far as a gateway, the sun is a hyperdimensional gateway. When you say that, you set up the proper resonance, and that's through cosmic law. Because cosmic law is, in essence, the capacity for literally you to take the wave and collapse it into a particle through consciousness. So when we, again, look up at the sun and identify the sun for what it really represents, we set up that proper resonance to receive the highest quality of information from it. Because again, the sun now sees something outside of its own existence that it can refer back to.
So perception is resonance then?
Perception sets up the resonance.
Sets up the resonance. So by calling the sun a hyperdimensional gateway, you're changing your perception. So when you change your perception, you change the resonance.
You change the resonance, because when you perceive it to be completely different, now there's a new visual in the mind based on new perception. The brain doesn't know any different. The brain doesn't know if it's looking at a sun, if it's looking at, a car. But the brain is crystal, it's a transducer. So based on the new visual that you have of the sun, now the brain serving as a crystal, which is piezoelectric, which means piezoelectricity means, if a crystal is piezoelectric and you apply compression to it, it generates a charge. So the visual of it is now producing compression, which is generating a charge by way of the brain being piezoelectric because it's a crystal. That brain is transducing that new visual, which is creating what you call a new neural network. So based on the new neural network that your brain has processed based on the new visual of the sun, the pineal gland is to be the middleman and to take that new neural network and convert it into what you call an endocrine output, which is a hormone. And that information then is translated to the red blood cells, and then the red blood cells then translate that information to the heart and store it in there as a memory. You see, so it's a physiological process that takes place, but this happens at the speed of light. So that's what changes the chemistry in the body, is by way of looking at something for what it really represents. But again, this is why we had to be educated in a certain way to perceive life very limited, because they understand that once you can moderate something based on its initial meaning behind it, or based on what it really represents, that's what physiologically sets up the specific resonance in the body to allow you to communicate with it. It's no different than when Nikola Tesla was into. He understood that when you have two resonant coils on opposite ends of the spectrum, one over in China and then the other one over in California, once you initiate a reaction to one of the resonant coils by way of alternating current, that's going to create a reaction or an effect and generate power on the other one clear across the other side of the world. But it's instantaneous. That means it happens at the speed of light, or quicker than the speed of light. So that's why it's important to allow the body to be the highest form of technology that it's supposed to be, because once you acquiesce to a higher level of living by way of treating the body like an electrical circuit, this is what allows you to set up the proper resonance to have that, that symbiotic relationship to the universe. So everything is based on perception, and that's what they spoke about. But again, we got to begin to perceive reality how our ancestors looked at reality. And that's how you set up that communication and that relationship.
I think I was reading Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about how the pineal gland is piezoelectric. I think is that how you say piezoelectric? Piezo?
Piezo or piezoelectric, right?
Piezoelectric, and to apply to stimulate it, you like under your for dudes, like under your nuts, like when you lift that area. I think what they call it, Kegel exercises. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, he's saying when you do that, you stimulate the pineal. You ever heard of that? You
I
know
mean,
anything about that?
I have.
Like you just keep raising it, and he said Montauk Chia talks about that in his book. Um, to do those Kegel. Anybody know what is that called? Is that called Kegel? What is that called? When you like under your scrotum, and you like the Montauk Chi used to talk about, you like you exercise it like up, and like what is that called, yo? Does anybody? I know y'all smart in the chat. If y'all know, yeah, it pushes the spinal fluid into the pineal. Yeah, that's what it's Kegels. Yes, Kegels. Yeah. So it's called Kegels. Is there any truth to that? Talk to me about that, brother. If you know anything about that.
Well, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, they say basically when you raise that, I can't remember the specific name that they give it, but it's a part of the body basically where through the inhale, you raise the cerebral spinal fluid up, and then you bring it back down through the exhale, but you got to be holding that part of the body, by way of the Kegel, exercise. Um, you know, with me, like it's a thing where it's a specific technique that you can dive into. In my opinion, honestly, I believe that there's other ways to stimulate the level of cerebral spinal fluid up the spine, what they call the kundalini. But with us specifically, melanated people, we have a completely different structure when it comes to these specific techniques, and we have a different relationship with the environment. So when you're talking about cerebral spinal fluid, you're talking about plasma. We have that in our brains, and they understood, in Kemet, that plasma again was some of the most important substance to understand, because going back to the brain sits in a pool of plasma, right? So with plasma being electrically conductive, with the brain sitting in a pool of plasma, even through the process of meditation, getting out of the Kegel for a minute, they understand when you generate that the Om sound. First, they understood that as the original sound of the electron, the Om, but they keyed in on that specific tone because they understood once you generate that tone, not only are you stimulating the glands in the brain, but you're also producing a disturbance within the plasma in the brain. Again, the brain sits in a pool of plasma that's electrically conductive. So when you generate that Om, what you're doing is creating standing waves in the plasma, or what they call in science electrical acoustic shock waves. Same thing that stars do in the cosmos. And this is what they were speaking about as far as with Shu in ancient Kemet, because they understood that when you're outside and you meditate and you stimulate the plasma to create those standing waves literally become detectors of the 0 point. And when I say the 0 point, I'm talking about the physical medium that we exist in. So even if you were to look in Kemet, and I can't remember the specific name of the place, but it's an alleyway with a bunch of rams going down the alleyway, and up under the ram is Osiris, or it's Osiris. But with the ram itself, again, what they were talking about was the four ventricles in the brain being a crystal that sits in a pool of plasma that's electrically conductive. And by stimulating the plasma by way of the Om, that's going to create standing waves, which then become a detector of the 0 point. So literally what you're doing is you're pulling in energy from outside inward, and you're manipulating the electrostatic environment, which again, they deified as Shu in ancient Kemet. So this is just a small technique that we can do in reference to meditating, that is outside of anything relative to the Kegel exercise. But with the
Alkebulan don't want to do them Kegel exercises, y'all. He like that. He like, hell no. I hear you, brother. I hear you. I'm just letting you know what I read, man.
Like I said,
I hear you, brother.
I understand it, but it's like we again come with a whole different disposition when it comes to the body. So we don't have to go to the greater extents, you know, to allow us to, you know, stimulate the pineal gland and the brain and things of that nature. We don't have to go to higher or, you know, extreme extents to do that. You know, people who have pheomelanin or, you know, who are lacking in, you know, in I guess a relative decent amount of melanin do have to go to those extent, because melanin, of course, are pigment centers which process and decode electromagnetic radiation.
You ever got into Montauk Chia's work at all? You ever resonated with his info?
I didn't. I know what you're talking about, but I haven't got into it yet.
Okay.
I know the guy who you spoke about in reference to what's his name?
Joe Dispenza.
Joe Dispenza, yeah, because he
Yeah.
speaks a lot about the pineal gland and
Mm.
you know, the cerebral spinal fluid striking it. You know, when you apply mechanical stress to it, it goes through what you call a piezoelectric effect, which then produces charge, which is all true, which is all true. But again, at the same time, you know, sun gazing stimulates the pineal gland. Going outside and you know, putting your bare feet in the grass, leg workouts stimulate the pineal gland, because the thighs is one of the few parts of the body that has a direct connection to the pineal gland. This is actually spoken on in the Bible in reference to, I don't remember the specific verse, but it's in reference to when Jacob wrestled with God, and God grabbed Jacob by the thigh, and he seen God face to face and named the place the pineal, right? What they're talking about is, when bodybuilders even know this, when they work the legs out, that's one of the first parts of the body they work out, because not only does it hold the upper body to where it's supposed to be, but also too, it stimulates certain levels of hormones via the pituitary and pineal that allow the physical body, or the upper body, to basically have the same proportion as the lower body. You see?
I remember hearing brothers say that we not supposed to lift weights. It creates some type of fluid in our body. We supposed to do like calisthenics and shit like that. You know anything? I know you scientific. You know anything about that? Lifting weights. Damn.
Lactic acid. No, is it
Lactic acid, right?
acid? Lactic
Yeah.
acid. Yeah. You know, well, that's, I mean, yeah, because we have what you call fast twitch muscles. You know, people who are more of a European descent have you know, slow twitch. So it's, you know, calisthenics is something that we naturally do. And to be quite honest, to answer your question, yeah, calisthenics is something that our body is more accustomed to doing, because that's what we did naturally. You know, before there was any weights or anything like that, we were doing calisthenics, and we were basically using the body as the weight to build up our physical body. So you know, lactic acid, of course, is part of the process, but you're breaking the, you know, the body down and, you know, things of that nature. In my opinion, you know, bodybuilding came by way of you know, vanity, you know, the outer appearance. So when we're dealing with gladiators, and we're dealing more with the Greeks, and now we're getting into the battles at the Colosseums, etc., they would have to create a situation where their physical body was strong enough to compete. But we weren't looking at reality in a way where everything was competition, right? We again have a relationship with nature where everything is symbiotic. So naturally, we will build muscle through even jujitsu and certain techniques of grappling and, you know, things of that nature. It wasn't something to where, again, we had to take something outside of us and literally build our bodies with. We use nature to allow the body to acquiesce to a certain condition that then allowed us to perform, you know, a certain way. So,
Indeed. What do you what's going to happen? We're talking about, you know, this is for before I ask that, is the 0 point field, that's the same thing as what we're talking about, the primordial waters of noon, same thing?
yeah. So So the primordial waters of noon in the 0 point is the same thing. It's what they call in science the dielectric field. It's what they call counter space. You know, it's what they call empty space, the space in between me and my phone, which is full of light, right? Light that we can't physically see. But in essence, that's the primordial waters. But the primordial waters has always been here, even prior to space. You know, because space comes by way of magnetism. When you lose, and what they'll call it this in science, but when you lose inertia, or the loss of energy is what produces a magnetic field, which thus is space. But even beyond space, exists the primordial waters. So the primordial waters, to answer your question, yes, is counter space. It's on the tip of my nose. It's you know, like I said, what they call in science the dielectric field. Black essence, what they call blackness.
Do you, like in your home, do you charge this empty space by speaking to it? Do you do things to charge the empty space, you knowing that it's not empty?
Yeah.
Like what do you, I'm sure people want to tap into this empty space science that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. So when when you study field theory, this is what they speak about. They don't today talk about field theory because that's, again, they got to return back to the blackness all the time.
But
Talking
yeah.
about electricity, when they're talking about field theory, they always got to return back to the blackness. So they try to you know, segue away from certain topics to speak on. And this is why they compartmentalize everything. So when you're looking at science today, they always say that we exist in empty space, but then they say, you know, there's atoms that exist, and then there's quarks, and then there's gluons, and then there's photons, and they look at reality from a very compartmentalized perspective, as opposed to just understanding that we exist within a huge field. And this field, in essence, would be considered the primordial waters. And speaking things into existence is equivalent to literally dropping a rock in a pond and seeing the ripples take place. So there's a medium that exists between us and the sun. There's a medium that exists between me and this phone. There's a medium that exists between me and the car outside. But that's what collectively connects us all together, is by way of the primordial waters, because that's where we come from. The Greeks called it the the materia prima, the undifferentiated space, was what they call the primordial waters. But in essence, when you're speaking things into existence, you're creating a disturbance, again, which is like the initial disturbance that took place in the primordial waters. So you're initiating a vibration, which begins the process of creation. And when you're looking at it from that standpoint, understand the perfect analogy to look at is literally dropping a rock in a pond. The pond will serve as the field or the primordial waters, but then that rock generates ripples, or, you know, what I call prior to longitudinal waves. But those longitudinal waves is what you call the rate of induction. Today, what they call the speed of light, but light doesn't have a speed. It's called the rate of induction. And when you create a disturbance within this field that we exist in, more specifically, and the family, want the family to look this word up, it's called hysteresis. The hysteresis of the ethers, because it's a perturbation that you generate within the waters, which is a disturbance. So that's why I spoke about earlier, there's really no such thing as the Big Bang, because the Big Bang takes place every second of the day by way of us oscillating in and out of existence faster than the speed of light. That's in essence the Big Bang, because it's a return back to the primordial waters, then back to the physical, back to the primordial waters, back to the physical. But even speaking things into existence is what's going to create that disturbance within the waters, that's going to propagate what I said, or what I call a longitudinal wave, which is instantaneous action at a distance. So this is even the science that our ancestors were familiar with telepathy, because they understood that we exist within a medium. That medium is what connects us all, the primordial waters. So when we perform telepathy, we're dealing with longitudinal interferometry. That's the science of stargates. That's the science of portals, that your ancestors were looking into. It's called longitudinal interferometry. But that's the science of telepathy, by way of, again, us understanding that we exist within a medium. And when we can create a disturbance within this medium, it's going to propagate waves, which is longitudinal waves, that are action at a distance, which means it gets there instantaneously to whoever you're trying to perform telepathy with. So, you know, to answer your question more specific, yeah, we exist, you know, within the primordial waters, what they call counter space, or the dielectric field.
Well, deep brother, no, we definitely take for granted or don't appreciate the empty space that is around us, and we don't really charge it, or like you said, throw that rock in the ripple in the wave and create in the ocean water and create that ripple.
Well,
I
it's like,
mean,
yeah, well, it's like this. It's like this. And you know, we always talk about creating our reality, but we're doing it by way of the medium. So when we naturally follow our passion, you know, what takes place is first a thought or an image, something you want to bring into manifestation. For an example, if I think of a bike, you know, that is longitudinal interferometry because it's instantaneous action at a distance. So as soon as I think of a bike, boom, it's there. There's no delay. There's no, you know, waiting on the bike. As soon as I think about it, boom, it's there. That's dealing with longitudinal waves. Another analogy I can give the family as far as longitudinal waves or longitudinal interferometry is if one person is standing on one end of a long ruler and then you have another person standing on another end, the minute that I push on that ruler, that person on the other end is going to move instantaneous. You see, there's no delay, there's no loss in energy. He moves instantaneously. Now, the light that they have us trapped in is called Hertzian. That's dealing with transverse waves. So transverse waves is equivalent to one person being on one end of a rope and then me being on the other end of the rope. The minute I snap that rope, it's going to generate the wave, but it takes a couple seconds to that wave to get to the other person. So there's a loss of energy between that process. So when I'm speaking about longitudinal waves, again, I'm talking about instantaneous action at a distance. So it gets to you just like that. But basically, creating your reality is in reference to first generating the thought, which is dealing with longitudinal waves. So the minute I have a thought, I got to work towards that thought. Now, this is force and motion, what they call God. God is nothing but force and power, but we're talking about force and motion. So in order for me to literally spiral the thought of the bike in the physical reality or crystallize it in the physical reality, I got to begin to work towards it. That working towards it is what's creating force and motion. And by way of the heart, by way of you following the heart, based on it having a gravitational center, it has the capacity literally to propagate or pull or to literally spiral in the thought of the bike. Because when you're spiraling in, you're literally bending the ethers. And when I say the ethers, I'm talking about, again, counter space, the fluid-like environment that we exist in, the primordial waters. You're literally spinning in the thought. And when you're spinning charge, you're collecting what you call inertia. So when you're working towards what you want, you're moving towards it. You're trying to do whatever you can to get to that thought that you have. You're collecting inertia by way of a spiral. That inertia and the collection of it is the definition for mass, you see? So literally, again, starting at the beginning, we came into existence by way of a centripetal convergence, which is a spiral. It's a spiral inward. And the same process takes place when we're working towards something that we desire, that we have in our mind, we want to bring into fruition. But that's the piece that we miss. We always have the thought, but then we forget that we got to work towards it, because working towards it literally is going to manipulate the heart by way of creating a centripetal convergence within the ethers, spiraling in the thought to crystallize it to a physical representation for you to, you know, interact with. And the perfect geometry that I can give you as far as what that looks like is called a torus donut or a toroidal donut. So if you ever seen the toroidal donut, an analogy to give you is we live in the center, and then there's a trajectory spiral towards center. But then there's an opposite spin that actually creates the geometry of the torus donut itself. That's the magnetic field. So,
like an apple? Like, is that like an apple?
right. That's the conjugate geometry of the universe. So we all have conjugate geometry around us, which in essence what we call a magnetic field. But again, it's us working towards what we want, which is going to spiral the thought by way of that centripetal convergence, which is the spiral literally going down towards the middle, towards where we exist at, which you call the dielectric plane of existence. You know, so that's in essence the science to that. And again, that's why they keep certain language from us, because once we understand the language, the scientific language, then we can apply it instead of kind of seeing things, you know, haphazard and using certain buzzwords like create our reality, etc. We can actually have the cosmic mechanics in the visual to see how that works and actually, you know, demonstrate it in real time.
You know what? I do. That always helps me tremendously when it comes to manifesting my reality. And maybe you could break it down from a scientific perspective. And this is all tied into what you was just talking about when you're talking about the thought being electric and then us working toward it. In terms of, from my understanding, the thoughts are electric, you know, but the emotions are magnetic. So your heart, you were talking about the heart, your heart, this when you're emotional about something, you produce this wave that's way bigger than what a thought, just a thought alone would be. So I find that when say I'm in my imagination, when I'm able to get emotionally invested in my, not just thinking, we know how to think about success or think about, let's say you want a wife, I think about a wife. But when I'm able to say I'm in imagination, the room is dark. If I'm able to emotionally embrace my future as if it's happening, not think about my future as it's happening, but if I emotionally embrace it as if it's happening, woo, that shit, that man, listen, that shit is pot. This shit come running to me, brother, running. And
yeah, no,
yeah.
go ahead, finish
No,
up.
no, I was just saying that's when the shit come speeding toward me. And that's why, a lot of people wouldn't get this. And I talked years ago about Henny Magic. And I would say, yo, sometimes I would drink Hennessy because, and not to be around nobody, but just when I do my rituals, it got me so emotionally involved in my visualization that the shit felt better than actual reality. Sometimes shit manifests and I'd be like, God damn, this shit. Well, my imagination, it felt a little better. Like my imagination gets so good sometimes that I prefer that shit. Like that shit is popping. You know what I'm saying? So talk to me about emotionally, and we'll have another show another day. The Metaverse is, I'm not saying the Metaverse. Shout out to Red and Blue. They done program my mind to say the Metaverse. Yeah, that's dope. They program my mind to say the Metaverse. But the Metaverse is tied into all of this. But we'll talk about it in another show. But talk to me about emotionally embracing your future to have it come to you at a fast rate, because I see like we are able to intellectually embrace it, but emotionally, that's something different. The kids are able to do that, but
Right,
not us.
right. And family too, before I continue, like some of the words, and of course you can go back and watch the video, some of the words I'm gonna encourage you guys to look into, because I always stress the fact that the scientific language is what's going to push us further. And this is why we can't walk into certain doors, because when we read these certain articles with these big words, we don't know what we're looking at. But our ancestors, they were scientists, they were engineers, they were alchemists, they dealt with these sciences. So when we begin to speak a specific language by way of applying a scientific context to it, this is what's going to allow us to open up supernatural doors, because now we're able to conceive what we're partaking in that we deem spiritual, right? So, when you're talking about adding your emotions into it, again, you're talking about the center point, the heart, right? So I always stress the fact that it's important to follow your passion. It doesn't matter if, you want to be, let's say, like a musician, and it's 3 o'clock at night, and you don't know how you're gonna, you don't even know, you don't even have the first, you have no idea how you're gonna get there. In your mind, you're gonna be the best rapper, and you're gonna win certain awards. But the key is to follow your passion. It doesn't matter how minute the action is. So I can be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting down, just writing, because what's taking place is you're participating in something that you love to do, right? So love itself manipulates time and space. So this is why they always say when you're having fun, time flies by quick. Because again, the heart has a gravitational center in it, and it literally has the capacity to manipulate time and space by way of a math called torsion tensor. And that's literally creating a ripple within the universe, within the fabric of space and time. When I say fabric of space and time, I'm talking about, again, the primordial waters, the ethers, the dielectric field. So if I'm sitting down at 3 o'clock in the morning, what's happening is my heart is changing its rate. And when you follow your passion, you also develop a larger level of compassion for people. But I always say you can't even say compassion without saying compass, because your compass is what gauges the magnetic field, which is your mind. So naturally, when you follow your passion, the universe has to acquiesce to that reality. It doesn't matter how crazy it is, because again, what you're doing literally is you're allowing the universe to see something outside of its own existence that it, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, it can refer back to. So your passion is your compass to allow your mind to take you exactly where you need to go. And when you continue to do that, again, you're going to develop a higher level of compassion for people, which is naturally going to put you on the trajectory of you giving by your heart, giving by way of love, giving services to the people. So adding your emotion is critical, because, and this is why, like I said, they don't speak about field theory or that we exist within a fluid-like dynamic, is because when you are following your passion and doing something you love to do, you're literally, like I spoke on, creating a centripetal convergence within the ethers. And that centripetal convergence, which is a spiral, is collecting inertia. And when you collect inertia, you develop mass, which is the physical reality. But that happens like that when you're following your passion, because again, your heart is creating a gravitational center, which is allowing that centripetal or dielectric acceleration to take place. This is why I always speak about the fact that, again, if you want to be a musician and you see yourself winning an award, play that out in real time. Like, I can be in my bedroom right now, but in my mind, I can conceive that I'm in a 5-star hotel. Again, my brain doesn't know the difference, but the visual is processed. The brain then transduces that visual and produces a physiological change, which sets up the body at a specific resonance for you to attract that reality to you. You see? And even something as simple as going outside and, honoring the birds, looking at the birds. And this, I speak about this too, and this is in reference to cosmic law, but it's you following your own law. This is by you applying emotion to what you're doing. So if I'm outside and, I see an owl in the tree, just a random owl in the tree, like anybody haphazardly is going to see the owl and just say, oh, okay, that's, an owl, whatever, just kind of walk by it. But what you're supposed to do is spiritualize matter. Dr. Phil Valentine spoke about this. We came here to spiritualize matter. What he's talking about is when you see that owl, define it based on your own interpretation. So when I see that owl, I'm going to say, well, that owl means this to me. This is what I'm going to receive from looking at the owl. The owl is white. So the white of the white owl represents this. This is what I'm going to bring into my reality based on seeing this owl. Because what you're doing through physics is you're qualifying the wave to be the particle and the particle to be the wave, thus creating that threshold. And that threshold is now, again, you seeing God almost face to face, because now you set up a proper resonance for the universe to deliver that reality to you by way of teaching the universe what it is, because you're acknowledging the thing outside of you to be you. You see? So it's all in reference to, again, perception and interpretation. And when you live your life spiritualizing reality, your level of appreciation of light changes, which now you're applying your heart and your emotions to everything you're doing, which is going to maximize the attraction of the reality that you're trying to see. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, a lot of people sleep on the power of appreciation and gratitude, and that's one of the fastest ways also to attract what you want in your reality, is just by simply being thankful or grateful or appreciative for it. So yeah, definitely. I want to get to some Q. Wow, this was an amazing session, man. We passed the 1 hour mark, family. I want to take a break to tell y'all thank you for being in the room tonight, family. We got over 1,100 people in here right now. I want to make sure all y'all hit the like button, family. Very important. Everybody hit the like button. Very important for the channel, for the algorithm, for this type of science and this type of information to continue to grow. It's very easy. The easiest thing in the world, family. Hit the like button. Also, if you appreciate this level of content that you are getting, that we are delivering to the community at this time and during this paradigm shift, make sure you support channels that are giving it to you. Very important. Reciprocity. It's currency, So my Cash App is $Black Magic 363. I always appreciate any support that I get, whether it's Cash Apps, whether it's hitting the like button, whether it's just telling your friend that I'm on live right now. But it all helps us, supports, and gets this information out. Alkebulan, do you have a Cash App you would like to share with the family, my brother? Or
Yeah. So my Cash App is $Alkebulan and the number 44. $Alkebulan 44. And like I told the family too, you know, again, go back and watch the video. And some of the terms that I'm speaking about, do your due diligence and look into them, you know, because I tend now in my teaching to push the narrative forward when it comes to content. So when I'm speaking more from an electrical engineering background. And for those who don't know, I'm in school for mechatronic engineering. So that's computer science, electrical engineering, and then mechanical engineering combined. So it's dealing with robotics and AI and things of that nature. So it's a lot of math. It's a lot of electrical theory, a lot of field theory. So when I'm speaking from this context, I'm speaking again on how our ancestors would perceive reality based on applying a scientific context. So, you know, look up terms like longitudinal interferometry, look up terms like optimized translation of vorticity, look up terms like quantum chromodynamics, because these are terms that's going to put you right in the driver's seat when you're trying to understand the mechanics of the universe. And once you can get the mechanics of the universe down, then your appreciation just for life in general begins to increase, because now you see that you're a main player within this cosmic script that's taking place. You see, so science is, you know, the avenue that's going to allow us to tangibly really work with our spiritual nature, because we got to bring the two worlds back together, you know, and combine them to see what, you know, what our ancestors are really speaking about.
I got the mute button on. I'm sorry, family. Geometric Alignment wants to know, hey, Rich, can you ask him his morning routine?
My morning routine. So, you know, every rising when I get up, you know, I don't look at my phone for the first hour. That's key, you know, because you don't want to allow yourself to process the artificial light. Not only that, those who get up and immediately pick up their phone, naturally throughout their day, they're going to be more reactive as opposed to rational, you see, because when you begin to live your life to where your pituitary, your pineal gland is being overstimulated by the blue light, then that creates a chemistry in the body by way of now you're going through your day and you're being a lot more reactive as opposed to rational. So the first thing that I do is I get up and I avoid getting in my phone, but then I step outside and I sun gaze. So I sun gaze literally every morning. I don't miss a day where I don't sun gaze. So prior to even looking in the phone, within that hour, I go outside, I sun gaze for maybe like 20 minutes. And once I sun gaze, I'm understanding that while I'm sun gazing, I'm stimulating a specific part of the brain called the thalamus reticular nuclei. Now, the thalamus reticular nuclei you can see in Kemet. So if you see a bird or a falcon in Kemet, that falcon would be the medulla oblongata, but then there's a sun disk on top of the falcon's head that is the actual thalamus. So the falcon is deified as a medulla, and then the sun disk as a thalamus, because it represents the fact when you go outside and you watch the sun crack the horizon, which is why the Sphinx sits on the east and watches the sun crack, or faces the east and watches the sun crack the horizon, is because it's important to get sunlight in the eyes early in the rising, because this is going to stimulate the thalamus reticular nuclei, which is going to generate or trigger an electrical current in the cerebral cortex, which is going to stimulate the brain and the mind and then raise the level of consciousness. So I do that first thing in the morning. That's the first thing that I do. I sun gaze. And then prior to, 12 o'clock, after sun gazing, I try to avoid putting anything in my body because I want my body to recalibrate. I just woke up. So I want it to get to a state where it's ready to put in solid foods and things of that nature. But prior to that, it's still in this process of recalibrating. I'll tell you this: people who tend to forget about their dreams a lot upon waking up, what you want to do is, if you really want to remember your dreams, you want to wake up and then not move at all. Like you want to sit still, like not even move your head, not even do nothing, like literally sit still, because what's happening is now you're allowing the conductivity in the body to maintain the integrity of the magnetic field where the thoughts are taking place. So that way you'll notice that when you're sitting still upon waking up, the dreams are coming to you like this. So that's key. And to people who, like they said, they can't remember their dreams, is don't move, because you allow that electrical current to remain there in the body to, you know, maintain again the integrity of the magnetic field where the thoughts and everything, you know, are taking place. I wanted to throw that in there, but prior to 12 o'clock, that's the key thing that I do. Is, you know, I get up and of course drink water, avoid looking in the phone. I sun gaze for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then, you know, if I'll try to get a light workout in, I'll do that, because again, the key is to build up the chi in the body. You want to generate more mitochondria in the body. You do that by way of lifting weights, because again, the mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. So for you to have a clear thought throughout the day, you want that magnetic field to be strong. You want that mind to be strong. So be prior to 12 o'clock, you know, after sun gazing and drinking plenty of water, you want to be able to go out, even outside, go out and lift weights, go to the gym and lift weights. And that's going to, you know, build up the mitochondria to allow you throughout the day to have that charge to be able to get through the day. But that's pretty much my daily routine as far as waking up and arising.
Indeed. You was talking about dreams and even your diet. It's crazy, man. When I was younger, when my diet was at its worst, I had the craziest dreams and nightmares, man. Me eating crazy food, eating late at night, eating all types of crazy shit, man. I would have these crazy nightmares, bro. And then as soon as I changed my diet, that shit just disappeared, bro.
Yeah, yeah. And that's all in reference to that you know, the microbiome in the gut. You know, when you're eating poor foods, you know, people who do shrooms as well, they'll attest to it. Like those who eat a poor diet, and this is why they always tell you to fast too prior to taking psychedelics, is because you want the microbiome to be, you know, at a point where it's healthy. So when you take the technology or the plant-based technology, yeah, you want the body to be at a place of homeostasis. So those who have bad trips when they're on shrooms more likely are eating a poor diet, you know.
Mm,
So yeah,
mm. Yeah, they don't tell you that, you know.
yeah.
Hey, let's get to another question. Why are there so many plasma clinics in the hoods all over America?
I mean, that's simple. I mean, well, of course, plasma, you know, itself it's an electrical conductor, but you know, plasma stores memories too, right? Because our body is made up of mostly water, and you know, plasma itself has a hexagonal geometry to it. So if you look at structured water looks more of like a gel. So the goal, even within the body, is to structure the water in the body, and you do that by way of infrared radiation. This is why they always tell you to put your glasses of water outside, because it's the infrared radiation that's actually structuring the water, so that way the water can literally become like a battery. So when you drink it, you're charging up, right? But if you look at the plasma in the body has a hexagonal geometry. Hexagons are known to trap light and information and sound. So within the plasma itself, not only is it electrically conductive, you know, not only does it cost a lot of money, and it's lucrative, you know, but it also has the capacity to, you know, store information. So there's information within the plasma in the body, you know, and like I spoke on earlier, plasma and ionizing it is what charges the physical body by way of the melanocytes that produce the melanin in the body. And if you can get rid of the plasma and pull it out of the body, that makes you less receptive, you know, to your symbiotic relationship to the universe that you naturally have. So those are key things to always remember when it comes to this plasma, because you know your plasma is intelligent. And when you eat a certain diet and electric foods and you take care of the body, the plasma literally becomes intelligent, you know. And that's the science in the ball lightning. They understand ball lightning can perform telepathy. So it responds to you. So ball lightning basically is a process of me standing in front of a ball of lightning or ionized plasma that's intelligent. And when I move, it moves because it's literally intelligent enough to understand, your thought process. So plasma in and of itself is like a whole nother entity, to a certain extent. But, this is, why they will put it in the hoods where the black bodies are, who are literally semiconductors and who are photovoltaic, meaning we take photons and convert it into bioelectricity and filter it through as information. So in order for us to, avoid being the superhumans that we are, we got to get rid of, they got to get rid of the one thing that makes us electrically conductive, and that's plasma.
This is a comment, but I'm gonna ask you a question. Miss Princess Hotep. What a name is Princess Hotep. All right. Miss Princess Hotep said my candle is burning like crazy right now. Got a question. From what I understand, we exist in our ancestors exist in a different phase of matter that we are in, and the candle. I've heard somebody say this, so I'm gonna ask you. The candle, the flame, is very easy for spirits to manipulate. So they say when you do rituals, look at the flame and the flame be moving. You may say something and the flame may move a certain way and shit like that. So they're saying Phil said that the flame, the Hebrew language is called the fire language because it's based on the sun, the light language of the flame or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they say when you meditate or whatever you do your rituals and you look at the flame, that a spirit is communicating through you, like through a Hebrew fire language. You may not understand it consciously, but your subconscious understands the language of that flame, that shit that it may go up, down, side, and So talk to me about that flame being a light language, a Hebrew light language. And when we talk and we got the candles burning, if we just observe it, something is speaking back to us on another level that we can't understand.
Yeah, so it's fun. Well, today, okay, so here's the deal with that. Because we can go into different areas. So, of course, fire is an element. It's one of the, 4 elements. Yeah, quite frankly, we're dealing with fire, we're dealing with ether, we're dealing with heat. But today they call that the alphabetical symmetry of light because they understood that it's a light language. When you're dealing with light language, it's about language that can speak directly to the genetics.
Right.
So when you're looking at the hieroglyphs are the same thing. They're designed in a certain way to where the individuals who have the genetic memory of the people from Kemet, once they gaze their physical eyes, and the eyes serving as the outer representation of the nervous system, when they gaze their physical eyes on the hieroglyphs or the light language, that literally stimulated the interest of the information that's encoded within us and thus bring it to the conscious mind. You see? So it's the same concept with fire, with a fire language. And like you said, this is where they developed the Hebrew language because in essence, when you're looking at fire and flames, you're looking at the fact that a magnetic field is being tilted at a different angle. So it's in reference to, and again, the perfect image that I can give you is a toroidal donut. So if you turn the toroidal donut at a specific angle, you'll notice that you'll see Hebrew language or Hebrew letters in it. So this is in reference to the fire language because with fire itself, fire has that conjugate geometry of the universe around it, which is that toroidal donut. Everything does. But the Hebrew letters, again, came from the angle momentum of the fire, but also, too, when you tilt magnetic domains at specific angles, you'll get certain letters that will be revealed from them. And that's how you develop language, because a language is supposed to be biological, meaning a language is supposed to speak directly to the genetics. So once you can create a language that can do that, this is again how you stimulate a physiological reaction. But yeah, that's why it's important as well to stare at the candle when you're in a completely dark room is because the candle is also stimulating that piezoelectric effect we're speaking about in reference to the pineal gland. The piezochromatic aspect of a pineal gland comes by way of closing the eyes while staring at the candle. So if I'm closing my eyes and I'm staring at a candle, the piezochromatic effect of it is being stimulated, which is responsible for producing the colors and the visions that you see. So, when I'm sitting here and I'm meditating and I'm looking at a candle, you're going to notice that you still see the flame, even eyes are closed, but that's by the piezochromatic aspect of the pineal gland, because that part of the gland is what allows you to see colors and visions with your eyes closed. So
Powerful. Let's get to a few more questions. I seen one that I want to ask. Okay. George wants to know, when you meditate, what should you see and feel?
You shouldn't see and feel nothing. I mean, the key basically is to be still. The Mayans called it the mystic column. Our ancestors would always speak about existing in between the thought that you're having now and the next thought. So the goal is always to be neutral. So when you're in meditation, you want to allow yourself the ability to literally not think, because when you allow thought into the mind or the thought then begins to tell you who you are, when in essence you're omnipresent. So when you allow your body to set up a specific resonance by way of being neutral within meditation, literally the brain begins to oscillate at a specific rate. Now, this oscillation takes place in the brain, and because the plasma that the brain sits in is electrically conductive, this is what allows you to tap directly into what they call the ionosphere. So when people are meditating and they're doing it the right way and receiving insight and things of that nature, it's because their physical brain is oscillating at a specific rate because they're in the mystic column. The Mayans called it the mystic column. Egyptians or the Cometians called it the space in between each thought, because your brain literally sets itself up like a tuning fork to tap directly into the ionosphere and pull information in. So to answer this question, yeah, you want to be completely neutral and practice the principle of being still and not allow, again, thought to impede on that process. But once it does, of course, observe the thought as if it's not even a part of you. But once you get to a point where you can naturally just tap in, close your eyes, and allow yourself to become literally like a tuning fork, this is how you tap directly into what they call the ionosphere, which then allows you to tap into the solar system, which then allows you to tap into higher star systems and beyond. But yeah.
Hollow Vegeta wants to know, shout out. Know you're a regular viewer. Shout out to Hollow Vegeta. Didn't the first letters come from chromosomes?
That's deep. I would say just based on my insight with that, I would say,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would say they would, because when we weren't privy to understanding anything at the beginning. So when you're looking at the original people on the planet, not having anything outside of them to reference to as any level of information, they were just observers. So the closest thing to the primordial waters that they came out of was the black body, because we were triple blackness. We dealt with blue black. We dealt with completely black. So when you're looking at something to relegate something outside of you to refer to as a duplicate of this source that you come from, you got to look back within the body. So when you're looking at chromosomes, and this is even the science of jujitsu as well, and grappling, what I spoke about earlier in the video, they understood that grappling actually imitated chromosomes, basically almost like creating a specific alignment. So the way that you would grapple and the way that you would perform jujitsu actually had a physiological change in the body, which then the shape of the chromosomes begin to change. So with that being said, that would, you know, kind of make sense based on that level of information. But that's an interesting concept. And that's something that, you know, just sparked, you know, my mind to even look deeper into. But I did hear something relegated to that concept.
Yeah, I got a book I was reading before the show, the end of the show. I got to go upstairs and get it, that deals with that. And I talked about this book before. Hollow. I'll tell you the name of the book before the name of the show. I literally was just reading this book before I took a nap today, like probably like 3-4 hours ago. So I'm gonna tell you the name of the book before we get off the broadcast tonight. Let's get to the next question. Any guidance for those of us who involuntarily travel through time, future, and events, and even in current events over vast distances while we are asleep? Okay.
Any advice?
Yeah, they want any guidance. Any guidance.
Any guidance?
While you talk about that, I'm gonna go get that book for Hollow.
Yeah. Any guidance for that? My question to him would be basically like, how often do you do it? Because, you know, again, the key is to allow the body to be completely conductive. And that's by way of living a certain. So people, you know, who tend to travel, you know, in their dreams, you know, they do it by way of you know, processing a certain level of light during the day. So going back to even ancient Kemet, you know, when you look at the mythology of Set and Heru, they're speaking about the circadian rhythm because they understand that the black body had to be outside for a specific amount of time to process as much light as possible. Now, when you go inside and the sun begins to set, the body then begins to produce melatonin to where now the brain waves are at a state where it's literally getting the body to return back to bed because now you're getting tired. And the goal for that was literally then for the body to regenerate itself by way of using the light that it took and processed throughout the day. So when you wake up in the rising, you're a lot more lighter than you were prior to the day that you know, embarked on. But the light itself that you're processing during the day is going to give you more of the visual when it comes to quantum leaping, what they call quantum leaping or quantum jumping. So that's key. So to answer your question specifically is to make sure that you're outside at, you know, for a decent amount of time to process that light. You know, because in essence, it's going to make the visual of you quantum jumping to different time spans a lot more prevalent and a lot more evident to where in your dreams, you'll be able to see what's taking place, you know, and come out of the dream with something specific, you know.
To the brother Hollow that just asked the question, let me put this on so y'all can see.
And this is the book speaking about the letters, right?
Yeah, this book right here, real good book, The Infinite Minefield. Let me give it to this question by Anthony Peake, and there's a section on light. There's a chapter on, y'all can hear me. There's a chapter on light right there. As you can see, I got all types of you know, highlighting and shit like that. Yeah, real good book to talk about that. He talks about how DNA follows the rules of basic syntax, the system by which words are created from individual letters, semantics, the meaning of words, and most surprisingly, matter itself. It was discovered that the sequences that are translated into amino acids known as codons seem to form words and sentences and follow basic grammatical rules. I was reading this like 2 years ago. Powerful. When I say it talks about, you know, ayahuasca, shrooms, it talks about all types of stuff, man. But this book right here is a real, it got a section on what we talking about today. And they had to give the props to darkness. What that say? 0 point field, 0 point energy.
Yeah.
Let me see if I got something in particular underlined that
good. What touch on that for a second in reference to the 0 point. If it's like 1 or 2 sentences.
Well, they got give me a second. Alkebulan.
Okay.
Man, here. Damn, I wish I. They got all right. So it's interesting. So this is called 0 point energy in dark matter. Exactly what we was building on today. So you know the brother ain't crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Let me just. I'm gonna read this. Shit. Yeah. I'm gonna read kind of fast, y'all. All right. Let me put it on here.
Yeah.
So my brother could just elaborate on this.
Yeah.
In the late 1900s, it was discovered that the rate of expansion in the universe is increasing. This is totally in contradiction to what should be happening. Modern cosmology believes that the universe came into existence through a big bang that took place 13.7 billion years ago. The universe expanded from a singularity by this huge explosion. Now imagine a much smaller explosion. The initial energy release is really powerful, and it sends pieces of the exploding object in all directions. At this stage, they are all full of energy. But as they move away from the source of the explosion and time passes, all the bits and pieces start to lose energy and slow down. This is how the universe should be. It should still be expanding, but the rate of expansion should be slowing down. This is not what was observed at the end of the last century. There was evidence that the rate of expansion was increasing. This is impossible unless there is something else at work in the universe, a form of invisible energy that is adding to the overall amount of energy within the cosmos. This new invisible form of energy was termed, not surprisingly, dark energy. What is intriguing is that there is strong evidence that this dark energy is in fact 0 point energy, and that the expansion could be fueled by ZPE. I don't know what that is. Oh no, but it could be fueled by 0 point energy. They abbreviated 0 point energy for ZPE. If this is the case, then there's a huge amount of 0 point energy within the universe. Indeed, the physicist John Archibald Wheeler calculated that a cubic centimeter of vacuum contains so much raw energy that if this was condensed into matter, there would be more matter than is known to exist in the observable universe. What is also intriguing about 0 point energy is that, according to a new theoretical concept known as quantum holography, it may be a medium in which huge amounts of information can be stored. Not only that, but quantum holography also provides a model by which all self-organizing systems, such as life itself, use the information stored within the 0 point field to evolve. The interface between the information-rich 0 point field and life is a molecule we have counted many times on our journey: DNA. DNA reads the information that is holographically encoded within the electromagnetic energy emerging from the 0 point field. Indeed, as we shall discover later, a series of very recent experiments suggest that this encoding takes place in a very specific part of the genome using a form of DNA known as long non-coding DNA. And it goes on, but I'll end there. But yeah, what you think about what I just read, my brother? Let me put this.
You said it succinctly, and just to kind of follow on with that, our DNA responds to our environment. Yeah, our DNA responds to our environment, and the 0 point field is what we're speaking about. So, and we're talking about dielectric field, when we're talking about dark matter, when we're talking about dark energy, when we're talking about the primordial waters of noon, when we're talking about the electrostatic field, when we're talking about the ethers, we're talking about the 0 point. That's what we're talking about. So even back in the early 1900s, there was a guy, scientist, Oli Kazirev from Russia, and then another guy named Richard Reitgard, who was a Nazi scientist, part of the Third Reich. And, they created what we call a Nazi bell. And this Nazi bell had the capacity to literally propagate off the ground. So it defied gravity. It was an anti-gravity machine. But they understood that, again, we exist within the 0 point. The physical medium that we exist in is a 0 point, which we have the capacity to extract information from. So, our DNA responds to our environment. So when we are feeling a certain way in a specific environment, the DNA has the capacity, because it performs implosion, it has the capacity to implode what you call scalar energy. And it can implode it because if you look at the top-down view of DNA, it's a dodecahedron. And a dodecahedron is one of the Platonic solids, one of the out of the 5 Platonic solids that follow what you call the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is the 1.618. So when you're dealing with wave mechanics and you're dealing with the golden ratio, that number is the only number once you apply it to electromagnetism, has the capacity to literally implode light or create a vortex. So the DNA, even our physical bodies, are structured by way of 1.618, because this level of sacred geometry is what gives the capacity to interact with our environment. But not only that, to literally process and implode what you call scalar energy, which is 0 point energy, through the DNA in order to electrify and energize the DNA. But that's what we've been speaking about, and he said it succinctly in the book. That was well described. You know, the 0 point is the medium that individuals who are privy to that information can pull from. This is even a science dealing with nuclear fusion. So when you see these articles coming out saying that we're this much closer to getting to, developing nuclear fusion, or we're this much closer to, generating free energy from, using nuclear fusion, the concept, that's secondary. So they're not really concerned about the free energy. What they found out when, these scientists who were part of the Third Reich, who were dealing with the Nazis, they found out that these nuclear fusions literally have the capacity to pull information from counter space, or the 0 point. So when we're talking about manipulating time, manipulating space, that's why they're developing the nuclear fusion machines, because they understand that by way of creating a situation within a nuclear reaction itself, it can literally create torsion within the fabric of time and space and pull information and energy from counter space into the actual nuclear fusion machine. So when we're looking at like the Mandela effect, the Mandela effect is coming by way of nuclear fusion, because nuclear fusion is manipulating time and space by creating torsion, with what they call torsion tensor in mathematics. Torsion within the fabric, even the concept in the movie, Wrinkle in Time. The title of Wrinkle in Time is, again, by way of manipulating time and space, by literally creating a wrinkle in it. And it's equivalent to, if I take like a pop can, or if I take a rag and I wring it out, the rag would be equivalent to time and space, and my hands would be equivalent to the nuclear fusion reactor. So it's literally manipulating and folding time and space, which actually contracts time and space. It makes it go faster, and it creates a situation where it manipulates it. So when you see, again, nuclear fusion reactions, that's what they're speaking about. They're speaking about literally pulling energy from counter space, or the 0 point, and manipulating time and space. So yeah, to answer your question, Rich, that's a powerful segment that you read in that book. And again, I would encourage the family to really tap into the book, because it's going to give you the context to what the body can do from a very scientific perspective. So this whole show, I want people to, like I said, back engineer, go back and listen to some of the terms that I'm speaking about, so we can really get a grips on, some of these things that are, coming out in these scientific articles.
It's interesting that the brother Hollow mentioned that, as far as the the DNA, and it made me get this book, because it's confirming everything that you're talking about. They got a section on the pineal gland, and then they got a section on piezoelectricity. So yeah, that's exactly what the brother was talking about today. This chapter is the mysterious pineal gland, and then it's the section on piezoelectricity. So this book is pretty much what this brother was dealing with today. You know what I'm saying? So I would recommend, if interested in this, I would recommend everybody to get that book. That's how spirit works, like that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And just to reiterate real quick before we get to another question, I just wanted to reiterate something that I spoke on earlier as far as the 0 point. Again, when you introduce, and this is what they understand, when you introduce a piece of technology within the 0 point that has a high enough voltage, this is how you can extrapolate free energy. So when I'm putting together the God body challenges, the God body challenges is just that. I'm understanding that we live in a fluid-like environment, the primordial waters. And when you fast, you're raising your voltage. So when your voltage is raised within this fluid-like environment, electrostatic environment that we exist in, this is how you're literally able to pull information from counter space, extrapolate it in energy, and utilize it in real time. So the 0 point is that specific. It has all the universal information and energy within it, and it's deemed blackness. So even when you look at the Pope, you look at some of these people who are praising the Black Madonna, who are praising these blue-black figures, what they're speaking about is pure blackness, and pure blackness is invisible by way of counter space. But that's where all the cosmic universal information exists. And we as a people have the capacity to access it, but we just got to set up the proper resonance to do it.
This culture of hiding the importance of darkness, the importance of the primordial waters of noon, and just focusing on visible light. Did it start? Do you know did this start before what we call the white man even came on the scene? Was this some shit that, because it seemed like there was a dark brotherhood and the light brother, like Star Wars type shit, and the light brotherhood conquered the dark brotherhood, and then from the time we start reading the glyphs, all we hear about is the light, the light, the light, and nobody is paying attention to the darkness. So did this happen before he came on the scene, or was this something that happened with white supremacy, you think?
As far as like the white versus the black?
As far as darkness being so bad and evil and wicked, and us wanting to stay away from anything dark or black.
Yeah, I mean, as kids, we grow up and are conditioned to be afraid of the dark. I mean, the darkness, again, is where everything exists. That's where all the information exists. Light is chasing darkness. Even in the Bible at the beginning, from the darkness came light, but they don't tell you that the light has to be housed back in the darkness to know itself. You see? So it's the darkness where all the information exists. Like I spoke about earlier, when you're in a completely black room and you're meditating, and not even meditating, when you're just in a completely black room, the part of the pineal gland that's Piezo chromatic is activated by way of the darkness, which is giving you your colors and vision within the dark. You see, so we pull from the blackness. I always say, even during a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, what our ancestors understood is that was a portal. A portal is dealing with darkness. So during an eclipse, what you want to do is do something uncomfortable. So if a lunar eclipse is taking place, which is a portal, which is scientifically called a dielectric accelerator, what you want to do is, if public speaking is uncomfortable, what you want to do during a lunar or solar eclipse is public speak. Or if getting on live on IG or if fasting is uncomfortable for you, you want to put the body in a place of uncomfortability, because that's going to maximize the output once you come out on the other side of the portal. So based on that ritual that you follow, you'll notice that you'll attract a certain level of abundance after that experience, because you literally alchemized the darkness. You went into the dark and pulled out the light by way of putting the body in a place of uncomfortability. And once you, again, follow that ritual, you'll notice that, you'll attract a lot of, supernatural things to you on the other side. So that's why, like I said, understanding the scientific part of spirituality is important, because when we hear about these lunar eclipses, these solar eclipses, we don't honestly know what to do when they're taking place. We know that they're important, but it's like, okay, well, do I set my crystals out? Do I sage my room? What do I do during an eclipse? Well, again, you want to put the body at a place of uncomfortability, because the body being, again, piezoelectric, adding compression to it is going to generate that charge. And once you get out on the other side of that eclipse, some opportunities will be presented to you.
Just a shout out to everybody who contributed via Cash App. I just picked up my phone and seen some of the donations. I greatly appreciate it, family. Let's get to the next question. Significance of heavy ringing sounds during meditations.
Significance of heavy ringing sounds. Well, I mean, the ears themselves contain plasma.
That never happened. That don't happen to you when you meditate?
When I meditate, do I hear ringing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. That's again, we're dealing with, and it's almost equivalent to when you're somewhere eerie, like say if you're in the woods and it's completely dark, or if you're in the woods in general, not even the woods, but somewhere that's very eerie, you'll notice like a piercing sound in your ears. It's almost like the density in the air changed, and it's almost like it's a piercing sound. That's the best way that I can put it. But basically that's what you're experiencing when you're meditating. Because it's, again, going back to that term, it's a longitudinal effect, because what's taking place is sound which is actually, you know, a propagation of a compression and rarefaction of the ethers itself, is what's communicating to you by way of the plasma that's in your ear, because your ear responds to vibration. So when there's a disturbance in the environment, that disturbance is again coming by way of the hysteresis. I spoke on that word earlier, the hysteresis, but that's the vibration of the ethers itself based on compression and rarefaction. But it's more specifically called a longitudinal wave, which is sound itself. So when you're hearing that piercing, that's certain levels of information. But again, the idea is to be able to, and I wouldn't even know how to decode that, but that's what that is. It's literally you tapping into a longitudinal wave, and that's the piercing.
Well, like you said earlier, and let me know if this is correct.
Mm-hmm.
When we hear that piercing, that sound, we have to change our perception, and through changing our perception, we're able to tap into the resonance. So by us saying, "Oh," instead of us calling it ringing, "Oh shit, this is information." So
Exactly.
by us just looking at it like that, instead of perceiving it as a ringing, even if we don't understand it consciously, you know, it'll tap into us, whatever.
Yeah, no, because nature will set up a synchronicity within your reality based on your perception. So if you perceive that to be something other than a ring, and say, okay, if I'm meditating, you know, and I perceive this to be, you know, I could say, you know, it's information coming from Sirius, right? I can perceive that, and the brain is going to transduce that information to develop a new neural network that's translated to the body to create a literal physiological change that sets up the resonance for nature again to set up a synchronicity for you to basically acquiesce to that reality of that sound coming from Sirius. So maybe like 5, 6 days, you know, later, you may be, you know, walking, and this is super random, but walking down the street, and you know, may just look on the ground and see the word "serious" and be like, "Oh shit!" Like, damn, that's crazy. And maybe like 2 days later, you're on the computer, you're typing a paper or whatever, and there's a ad that pops up, and it's about, you know, Sirius star constellation. You know, maybe, you know, 5 days later, you know, you meet somebody, and you just found out that a day prior they were studying all about Sirius. So Sirius is going to be presented to you by way of you changing your perception, because nature naturally is going to synchronize to that reality by way of you change your perception. See?
Isn't that the reticular activating system? Is that network in our brain, the reticular activating system?
Oh, the thermonuclear, the thermo retic the thermo reticular nuclei. No, that's something different. That
Okay.
cortex, and you know, yeah, more motor skills, more movement, stuff like that, motory, sensory, and things of that nature.
All right, we're gonna get to two more questions, family. We're about to reach 2 hours, and then we're gonna get out of here. Want to thank the brother Alkebulan for coming on the show. Give me let me find two more questions, y'all. Y'all still got some questions here. Let's see how y'all enjoying this show. I don't know if I don't even know what this. Can humans produce the Hutchinson effect with our voice? I don't know what that is. I don't know if the Hutchinson effect. Do you know what that is?
Familiar? I'm not even familiar.
Yeah. You have to elaborate for the individual that wrote this question. You have to elaborate on that.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, family, this show is pure science. You know, we took it to science class this show, but it's going to maybe a couple of listeners to, you know, go back and like, you know, really internalize the information and get it. And like I said, make sure you have a pen and a pad, you know, so that you're writing down certain things that I'm saying, so you can go back and look it up yourself.
Rich asks Alkebulan, do we really come from the dark side of the tree of life to live a life of light from the front side of the tree of life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, in essence, we do. Again, we come from the dark side, the darkness, and we come out to experience light. Again, light, though, or omnipresence has to participate in matter to become something it's not. So when you're talking about the light and the dark side, you're just talking about a level of duality, not to get too deep into the tree itself, but you're talking about duality. So in essence, the dark and the light side is just dealing with the right hand path and the left hand path. and they always tell us to walk the center path. But again, that's in reference to like I spoke about earlier in the video. That's always being at that neutral point. You want to be an observer of both sides. You know, and even our ancestors themselves, they always said to never define your outer reality based on how somebody else told you to define it. Observe it. Observe every experience that you go through, whether it's negative and positive, and that's how you properly extrapolate the lesson from it. But see, we've been educated to respond irrationally to negative events, not knowing that, of course, we've contracted to come here to experience a level of stress, because when you're dealing again with stress in a fluid-like environment, that stress is compression. That pressure, that compression on a body that's piezoelectric generates a charge. So when you are in a place of observant during a stressful experience, that's where you want to be, because that is what allows you to accelerate past the experience and thus also extrapolate the lesson from it. But you're dealing again with the dark side and the light side of the tree. But in essence, you just want to be an observer of both sides, you know, while you walk down the middle path of it. So.
All right, we're going to get to one more question tonight, family. What's your, where's it at? What's your thoughts? Where is it at? What's your thoughts on singing bowls and Tibetan sounds when meditating?
I think they're super important. I personally haven't partaken in singing bowls, which, you know, I plan on it. But, you know, again, we're talking about tones. We're talking.
I'm gonna have to get it now, y'all. Go ahead, go ahead. We're gonna end it with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. We're talking about tone. We're talking about frequency. You know, so our ancestors understood the importance of tone and frequency, even down to, you know, the fact that the pyramids themselves, these monuments that we glorify, we look at, they oscillated. You know, the pyramids itself was a power plant, so it released a specific sound or a tone. So they would name the pyramids or any other object based on the tone that was coming from them. Today, you know, we get into binaural beats, get into these things, but that's more of an artificial sound. So when you're talking about natural sound, singing bowls is important, you know, because singing, you know, bowls in reference to tone is, you know, yeah, Rich got it.
You can keep talking. Keep talking.
He got the cereal bowl. So yeah, that's key, understanding tone. And that's again what properly sets up the resonance in the body in order for you to acquiesce to a higher level of consciousness. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Leave the people with some. What message would you like to leave the people with while we get out of here and continue to, you know, mess with the singing bowl right here, brother? Deliver your ending message.
Yeah. So you know, with me, I spoke heavily about, you know, but also understanding you got to back engineer, and what I mean by back engineer is go back the process of Sankofa, going back and studying our how they understood the mechanics of creation. Naturally, that's getting access to a more scientific lens to how reality responds to you. So always remember that you hold dominion over the cosmos. We play the middleman between the quantum world and the celestial world, but the universe is going to respond to you once you set up the proper resonance. Like I spoke about earlier in the video, when you're going through your daily life, spiritualized matter. Spiritualized matter is by literally identifying something based on your own interpretation. So when you see hawks flying above you, or when you see, and our ancestors did it all the time. So when you see feathers on the hieroglyphs, the feathers on the hieroglyphs dealt with electrical static energy in the air, or electrostatic air, basically. You know, when you see the serpents on the walls, they're dealing with mitochondria. You know, when you see the snakes and the cobras coming out the sun disk, they're talking about supernovas, plasma discharge. You know, so this is what they did. They created metaphors around things they could physically see, but it was based on their own interpretation of it. which then became a reality, and that's what we're studying today. But see, that information is hidden. So today we have to then begin to allow light to participate in matter by way of spiritualizing matter, because we live within a physical reality that's governed by laws, but we're made of light. But how do you reconcile the two? Well, again, you got to go outside. And if you see, for example, and it could be anything, I'm using an owl for an example, but if you see an owl, you say, okay, this owl means that to me. This is what I'm going to receive based on receiving an owl. Again, once you do that, you're recognizing the owl to be you and the you to be the owl, because through physics, you're qualifying to be the particle and the particle to be the wave, thus creating a threshold to allow supernatural doors to open up for you, because you're in resonance with the universe, for the universe to see something outside of itself that it can refer back to. So my main takeaway, or my main message behind this show, is to spiritualize matter.
Indeed, man. I want to thank all of y'all once again for tuning in. Thank Alkebulan for just an amazing scientific show, giving us these new terms that we need to go look up. And it's dope, man. This is the paradigm that we're in. This is what it's about right now, family. It's game time right now. There's a changing of the guards, family. We up next. So, I look forward to doing my thing in this world and making it easier for my son to understand exactly who he is and where he comes from. And he's going to do the next he's going to do that with his child as well. Like I said, I want to thank Alkebulan. We're all waiting for conversation with the Cosmos with you and Blue Pill. So I look forward to when that comes out. When it's right, it's right. So take your time. When it comes out, we're all going to be here to support you, brothers. And with that being said, family, we getting out of here. Peace.
Peace.